Welcome to Dolfan Radio, podcast of Miami Dolphin fans. And now for your host, Brad Michaels.
Welcome to Dolfan Radio. I'm Brad Michaels. This episode brought to you by Continental Management Group. Remember, please like, comment, or share. We love to hear from you, and your support is important to us. Now, a few notes to start off the show today. A reminder, join us on draft night for a live show on Facebook. We will start approximately 30 minutes before the draft. We'll be live through the first 10 picks. Please join us for this exciting first selection. We're also running a first selection contest. To enter, just simply like us on Facebook, email us your choice for the Dolphins' first round pick, and email that to info@dolfanradio.com. The winner will receive a $100 gift card and will be announced on the live show, and there's more details on our site, dolfanradio.com. Today we're doing part 2 of the Dolfan Radio mock draft. This is picks 11 through 21, so let's get started. So let's begin by discussing, we'll kind of recap last week. I want to touch on one thing that's extremely important to me. You know, my pick for the San Francisco 49ers with that number 3 overall pick that they traded up to get, with Miami moving back to number 12. Of course, we all know that Miami then moved with Carolina, moved up to number 6. So we went with that order. And last week I was using a lot of Mel Kiper's picks, and one of the picks that he had was Justin Fields going in the number 3 position. Well, what I didn't realize on that, and I actually agree with, because I think San Francisco was put in or lumped in with Justin Fields. But if you read if you read everything on it and you see what they did, San Francisco never sent a contingent to Ohio State for their pro day. They went to Alabama. Now, I don't know, the thing is that Mac Jones, his draft capital is rising. So I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen there. I don't think anybody's exactly positive of what's going to happen in that 3rd pick. There's a lot of people saying Mac Jones. There's still a lot of people saying Justin Fields. So I think I'm going to stick with what I originally said. I said San Francisco would go with Justin Fields, and I think that they are, because they're having another pro day at Ohio State, and there is a big contingent of San Francisco 49ers personnel going. So, but it was interesting to note that Ohio State, Alabama had their pro days on the same day, their first ones on the same day, and San Francisco sent their entire contingent to Alabama to watch Mac Jones. So, and I know they're not going for Waddle, they're not going for Najee Harris, or they're not even going for Devontae Smith. You're not going to pick a wide receiver or a running back or anybody that high. So they have to be, in order to make that move that they did, which was extremely expensive for them, they have to be looking at a quarterback.
Yeah, Brad, with that San Francisco pick, it's kind of interesting. I went with Mac Jones. I was going out on a limb. Starting to sound a lot more likely they may go with Mac Jones. However, it's still up in the air. This is where the draft kind of starts to get a little bit crazy. So
I think it gets crazy at pick number 4.
Definitely.
We got to talk about the Atlanta Falcons, and what are the Atlanta Falcons thinking about doing? Because the scuttlebutt now is that the Falcons are entertaining the idea of trading out of the 4 pick and trading with potential partners like Miami has been mentioned. The Cowboys are mentioned. The New England Patriots are mentioned. I don't think they'll move up that high. But also the Denver Broncos sitting at number 9. They're also a big mention to move up and do something with Atlanta.
Yeah, this has been a hot topic of conversation over the last week, and maybe because nothing else is really going on with draft picks at this point. But, the Atlanta team had even said they're up to shopping that draft pick. And once they did that, the rumors just started flying. Denver became a good candidate, definitely needing a quarterback. You have Jerry Jones from the Cowboys actually calling Kyle Pitts as he was talking to Atlanta. Last week we were joking he was going to get a punter. Nothing with Jerry Jones would surprise me at this point.
Nothing ever surprises me with Jerry Jones. But that brings me back to Miami, because with this regime we have now in Miami, Chris Greer and Coach Flo, we never know what they're going to do.
And what's with the Mel Kiper rumor that's kind of hit the wire over the last 2 days? It's kind of made Miami and the Atlanta pick be an interesting point of conversation.
The problem is, and I was pointing this out earlier, and I don't have my draft chart in front of me, but the draft chart basically, Miami's pick at number 6 is worth 1,600 points. The Falcons pick at number 4 is worth 1,800 points. This is the same draft chart system, point system that Jimmy Johnson developed, and then everybody decided they were going to use this. So you have a deficit there for Miami of 200 points. The closest they're going to get at that point would be to give up, I believe it was their 81st pick, which they're still 15 points shy. It's only worth 185 points. So they're still 15 points shy. So where does that 15 points come from? It comes from a 4th round or 5th round pick somewhere in there. I just don't see Miami making this move. I don't understand if they do this type of a move, why didn't they just stay at 3? Because all of that draft capital that they got in the San Francisco trade, everything they got in the Carolina trade, it's a wash at this point if you move up 2 spots with Atlanta.
Yeah, to your point, let's talk about Miami and this trade. I mean, essentially, with what they have to give up, it's going to be a wash to start at 3 and end at 4 with no gains.
Exactly. You wiped out every gain that you got in the 3rd rounders, the 2nd rounders. I mean, okay, so you picked up that 1st rounder from San Francisco. That's a good pickup, but the rest of it's a complete wash. I don't understand Kuiper's thinking on this, do you?
I don't at all, and I think Miami did this intentionally. They have a plan in place. They're not the type of group to go squirrel and go chase after Pitts now because he's the hot topic.
Used to be.
He definitely used to be. And I think Pitts is he's worthy of being chased. However, this group at Miami's got a plan, and I think they're going to stay the course with whatever their plan may be.
I think that's exactly what they're going to do. I don't see the Dolphins moving out of the 6th spot. It just doesn't make any sense to me from a number standpoint to make it happen. They would have to give up their 3rd rounder this year. And folks, they don't have a 4th rounder. They don't have any. I think they have some compensatory picks that are coming up. We looked at those this morning. I really didn't look at them a whole lot, but they have some compensatory picks, so they're going to have a lot of draft capital this year. But I don't think you give up that 3rd rounder this year. If you could give away a 3rd rounder next year, maybe with a 4th rounder late, but we don't even know the draft order yet, so you really don't even know the points at that point. And is Atlanta going to fall back 2 spots for that type of compensation that's coming next year? I think they're going to want to pick this year somewhere.
I think, and I totally agree with you, and maybe kind of segue into the next point. Denver's been a trade partner, and this really has quarterback written all over it. Based on a lot of reading I'm doing this week, do you really believe the quarterback hype in this draft?
I do, and I think that there's a lot of teams out there. Denver, they want a quarterback. I think that the key point here is everything happens with Atlanta at the number 4. Is Atlanta comfortable enough right now with Matt Ryan for the next couple of years? Or are they wanting to go ahead and get that replacement for Matt Ryan right now while we have a very rich quarterback draft? So Atlanta's the wild card.
It is.
Who's their trade partner going to be?
A lot of the front part of this draft and a lot of the early mock drafts have 4 out of 5 of these quarterbacks going. But I started to do some research on this, and quarterbacks drafted in the 1st round since 2010, there's been 23 of them. Since 2000, there's been 60. And when you start ranking these guys, I was looking at some rankings this morning, probably 1 in 3, 1 in 4 teams are happy with. And then I put 2 in there because he was injured part of the season and recovering, and he just isn't proven yet. But when
it was a COVID year. It was a weird year to evaluate any players coming out of college last year, much less 2.
But when you start looking at the top of these quarterbacks that get ranked high, so now you're talking 60 quarterbacks drafted in the 1st round over 20 years.
Sure.
So you're talking basically 2 to 3 a year, right? Now we're talking 5 all of a sudden. So just to put this in context. But let's look at the top of the heap of who they're ranking. Rodgers, top of the list in the ranking I was looking at this morning, 24th pick. Mahomes, 10th pick. Roethlisberger, 11th pick. Jackson out of Baltimore, 32nd pick.
Yes.
Phillip Rivers, 4th pick. Now all of a sudden we're talking 4 quarterbacks.
There was Blake Bortles.
Bortles is definitely down the list, but you have a bunch of first picks in here, right? Eli Manning, Michael Vick, Matthew Stafford, Cam Newton, Andrew Luck. But all of a sudden we're talking about 4 quarterbacks in the top 5 picks.
Well, and back to your point, look at this list that you've compiled of the quarterbacks that were picked in the first round. How many of them are still with their same team that drafted them? You've got Carolina moved on from Cam Newton. You can't put Andrew Luck into the same category. Unfortunately, Indianapolis doesn't have Andrew Luck calling the signals anymore, but that was more injury related than anything. And I think he just didn't want to go through the grind of the physical treatment, the therapies to get back on the field. I think it was just too much for him.
Yeah, but also on this list, right, you have first round picks like Oakland's quarterback who had a Wonderlic score of 7, right? So and Tim Tebow and, those kind of journeyman people. But to think we've got everybody's talking about 5 stellar quarterbacks and jockeying for a position. I just don't see it. Trevor Lawrence, I put in the Andrew Luck category from a skill, from a play perspective. I think he will do well. And he stays healthy. He's going to outplay a career worth of Andrew
Despite
Luck.
the shoulder surgery, he is back. He's healthy. So.
But after that, I think out of these other 4, one of them is probably going to go to this team is happy elite status. The other ones will be okay. They'll be good NFL quarterbacks.
And if you're San Francisco, you better hope that the guy that you've targeted with that number 3 pick is going to be the guy. Because if you don't get the guy with that 3rd pick, your fan base is going to be jumping all over you. And every other pundit out there is going to be, they swung and they missed.
I don't think this thought process changes the way people draft. But watch this. We're talking about mock drafts and a lot of jockeying for 5 quarterbacks. These teams have to know the odds. This is a pretty star-studded draft when you start getting into the other player positions as well. And I look for a lot of changes in a lot of these mock drafts to be wrong.
Well, and you see, and that's the thing, with mock draft season, every year it's the same thing. You're going to have one mock draft after another. Everybody changes their mock drafts based on the news and the rumors that they're hearing from around the league. Thank you, Adam Schefter and John Clayton, for putting all those rumors out there. They give us something to talk about, but they make all these mock draft analysts look stupid.
We can almost add Mel Kiper to the list this week.
Possibly. Well, I'm gunning for you because I don't like that trade from 6 to 4 for the Dolphins. I don't think it makes any sense numbers-wise. Let's go ahead and let's get into our picks this week. We're doing 11 through 21. Let's get started with number 11. This is the New York Giants. They're on the clock.
All right, the Giants. It's the NFC East. I think they're looking for strong weapons. They're looking for our ball hawks on the defense. It's the entire NFC East kind of mantra. I did not have Devonta Smith going in the top 10 on my picks. I am saying Devonta Smith going to the Giants. I think another weapon in the NFC East to kind of stack up with the Dallas Cowboys.
It's interesting that you say that because every mock that I'm seeing, well, I shouldn't say every mock that I'm seeing out there right now, seems to be doing the same thing. Devonta Smith falling down a little bit because Miami's most likely going to take a pass on him. I'm hearing now the scuttlebutt is that Miami's more interested in Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, or even Jalen Waddle over Devonta Smith. And I think a lot of that has to do with what we've talked about in regards to Smith in the past. It's his size. Is it going to convert over to being successful in the National Football League, or are teams going to want to beef him up, which is going to slow him down?
Well, it's an interesting pick for me, right? It's one reason I pass on him from a Miami perspective is Tua, I don't think he has his placement yet from an NFL game perspective, right?
Right.
I think you get somebody big, a big target, great hands. That's great for Miami. The NFC East, they beat up on each other all year, every single game, right? So probably doesn't matter if you're small or big, right? Giants will pick the best player on the board, and I think that's Smith, right?
All right, that moves us along to the 12th pick. Philadelphia is on the clock.
All right, so for the Eagles, I have them picking a cornerback. It is a big need for that team. I had Surtain going to the Dallas Cowboys at 10. I think the logical choice is whoever Dallas doesn't pick. So I'm going with J.C. Horn here, the cornerback out of South Carolina.
All right, I differ with you on that pick. I'm going with Caleb Farley, he's the cornerback out of Virginia Tech. I think that's going to be the pick. Give us your reasons why you have your pick the way it is.
Well, J.C. Horn, there's a lot of analyst coverage in the news this week on Horn. His stock is rising as far as the cornerback position. I really think Dallas could pick him with the 10th pick. Dallas has been very high on Horn this whole time. But with my mock draft and Surtain going to the Cowboys, I think Horn is the second best cornerback in this draft.
Well, and again, we don't know what the individual teams' draft boards look like. So, again, it changes everything at that point also. Let's move on to number 13. This is going to be the Los Angeles Chargers.
All right, number 13. So for the Chargers, I have them needing both an offensive lineman and a cornerback at the top of their draft board. With that in mind, I think Christian Darrisaw, the Virginia Tech offensive lineman, goes here to the Chargers.
I'm going with Rashawn Slater. He is the offensive tackle guard from Northwestern. I believe he is the guy that they want to bring in there to protect Justin Herbert.
Great choice. I had him going 8 to the Panthers, so I'm really high on this guy, and I think that's a great pickup.
All right, that brings us to the Minnesota Vikings sitting at the 14th pick, needing offensive line help as well.
They do. They also need some edge rushing, and here is where I think a very strong edge rusher goes. For me, the Vikings pick up Kwity Paye, Michigan defensive lineman.
That's interesting because I've seen a lot of the mock drafts, and there is some speculation out there. Miami gets their guy at number 6, and Kwity Paye is still on the board at 18. That's who they're going to pick. I'm going this time with the Minnesota Vikings taking Christian Darrisaw. He's the offensive tackle again, another guy from Virginia Tech.
Yep, that's the same guy I just gave to the Chargers. Really good pick. I think he goes right around this range.
Okay. That brings us to pick number 15. Now, this is where Kuiper gets a little interesting. Again, Kuiper has the Dallas Cowboys moving to this spot because they would have had a trade with New England. So that messes this up. But if this is still New England, who's New England going after?
You know, Mel Kiper, I'm going to avoid the Mel Kiper trades this week, especially after the
Well, the thing is we don't want to get into any trades with the mocks, and here I am. I'm looking at stuff that's got trades. So.
Yes. So for the Patriots, Patriots could go all over the board here with their pick. I've seen some where the Patriots pick up the running back here. But personally, I'm going a linebacker. I'm going Micah Parsons, a linebacker out of Penn State, going to Patriots. I think he plays physical football. I think he can play very good Patriots football.
I'm going to agree with you on that. I had Micah Parsons going again later on, but I agree. I think that Micah Parsons in this position, I think it's a good pick for New England. I don't like it necessarily because it's New England. I don't want them to have a great linebacker like that, but I think that's probably what they're going to go with. They're going to try to shore up some of that defense, although they had a lot of holes on offense last year. But the biggest glaring hole that they have is Gronkowski, and somebody else was missing from that starting lineup in New England.
Oh, wow. And Edelman just
retired. Goodbye, Julian.
The best meme I saw all week once Edelman announced his retirement was the welcome to Tampa Bay memes.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that I don't know if you saw this, Gronkowski was asked, what is the percentages that you think of Edelman coming down to Tampa Bay? And he said 69%. Typical Gronkowski.
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to number 16, this is the Arizona Cardinals.
So Cardinals, very, very interesting for me because I still have Jalen Waddle on my board.
Wow.
The Cardinals definitely just beefed up their defense, right? They got Watt over there. They've got good. I think they have a decent quarterback now. They have good offensive weapons. I think Cardinals add a very young, strong weapon here and pick up Waddle, the wide receiver out of Alabama.
Jalen Waddle's probably a good pick there. I think that they need the help on that outside. They need a guy like Waddle who can stretch the field. They've got a good quarterback now. They've got a pretty good system there. I don't really think they need a whole lot over on the defensive side of the ball that mandates that you take something here with the 14th pick. So I think Jalen Waddle in that position, I think that's probably a good pick. I'll agree with you on that. Raiders on the clock at 17.
Raiders, oh my God, where do you start? Did they trade their entire offensive line this offseason?
They should have. Their entire offensive line was on COVID protocol most of last season because they just couldn't. They stopped stuck together. When I talk about an offensive line that was gelling together, it seems like every time there was something stupid going on in the Raiders building or outside of the Raiders building, it was always the offensive line that was the culprit.
Raiders seem to be on a cycle. I mean, they got a new stadium. They're going to have fans there this year. That's very exciting for them. But they're on a cycle. They draft really high defensive players, and then they get rid of them in 3 years. I think we're due for one of those. So I'm going with Jeremiah Owusu-Karamoah. He's a linebacker out of Notre Dame.
I'm going offensive line. I think they've got to do something to shore up that offensive line. I'm going to go with Elijah Vera Tucker from USC. He's an offensive tackle, and he can also play guard. All right. So now we come to the Miami Dolphins selection at number 18.
This is going to be interesting. Most of the posts, most of the chatter I'm seeing, I know everybody wants a running back at this position. I struggled with this one long and hard. You still have your top 2 running backs on the board. I think some teams are going to start jumping for them at some point. I'm not sure if it's going to be Miami. I'm going with no on this, but the problem with the running back is I don't think they're high enough to pick here. I think somebody will. I think for most teams, they're gone by the time they pick their next pick.
And that's the problem. Do you, as a team that needs a running back, Miami certainly needs a running back. We need somebody that can be that every down back. But do you make the leap here at 18 and take this guy that you want, because he's obviously still going to be on the board. Najee Harris is still there. Travis Etienne, he's still there. So do you make the leap? Is that running back worth that 18th pick? Or do you, if you're Miami, do you take your chances and wait until your 36th pick, your first pick in the second, in hope that your guy's still there?
Well, Harris and Etienne both won't be there at the 36th pick. You're talking about the 4th pick into the second round, 5th pick. And I think they're gone by then. I think they should be there if you're looking at it, but teams are going to make that move early. It's a gamble. Everything in the draft's a gamble. I think it's worth the gamble if you have a very strong read on one of these guys. For me, I'm going to play it safe here. They also have an edge rushing need. I'm going to go with Jalen Phillips. He's the edge rusher out of the Miami Hurricanes.
Okay. I have him going later. We'll get to that. But at this pick, I think Miami needs more offensive weapons. I've said that all along. I said, you go out there, you get Kyle Pitts, or you get your wide receiver, your guy, Jamar Chase, whoever it is that you want. I think at this point, Miami still needs that power running back that's going to be able to take a little bit of that pressure off of Tua Tagovailoa and give him a little bit more of an offense that you don't exactly know what we're going to be throwing at you. We can run the ball. We could have a pass catcher coming out of the backfield. I think Travis Etienne, I think he's a good pass catcher. He's obviously a game-breaking running back. I'm taking the Dolphins are going to go for that running back. They're going to go ahead and pick up Travis Etienne with that 18th pick.
Yeah, I think they're both solid picks. I think depending on their game plan, whichever they have in-house that they're not sharing, right? I think it's one of these two moves at this point.
It's one of the two, but I think that the Dolphins defense right now, I think it's strong enough. Yes, we need a few more playmakers on defense, but I think right now the defense is strong enough that the Dolphins can afford to wait until that 36th, maybe even that 50th pick, and then start shoring up that defense. Let's move along. Washington is now on the clock.
But man, I should run clips from everybody that's done video on mock draft. You could hear the same words being uttered about the Washington football team.
So remember, it's the Washington football team. It is no longer the, what were they?
The Redskins. But
I wasn't going to say it.
It's so funny because everybody's going through team needs, and we get to Washington, and it's the same clip for every show. We have no clue what Washington needs or what they're going to do.
Well, we know what they need. They need a football team.
Yes.
They need a nickname. That's what they need. So for Washington at pick number 19, I think they're going to pick a name. They're going to pick a mascot.
Well, I think the problem with the name change is their whole team reflects it. They have zero identity whatsoever.
None whatsoever. And I don't know, they got Ryan Fitzpatrick, a quarterback now.
Again, no identity.
Again. Well, you have an identity. I mean, it's either on or off.
Is he the backup or not the backup?
I don't know.
Yes.
I mean, he wants to go and play someplace where he can start. And I don't think he would have signed with Washington unless he had somewhat of a guarantee that he was going to at least be able to compete for the starting job. But again, Washington, they're a question mark all across the board. They have holes all over that roster.
It is. I would start with the offensive line, personally. That's where I would start to fill some holes, get some people some time, get some weapons around them afterwards. Here I go Elijah Vera Tucker, offensive lineman, going to the Washington football team.
I'm going defense with Washington on this pick. I think that they, as we've said, they could go several different ways here. But I don't, and again, we don't know how they're playing out their board, but this is where I'm going to go with Jeremiah Awasu Koromoa, the linebacker out of Notre Dame.
You know, they could trade up with Dallas to get their punter here at that point.
That's a good possibility because that would be one of those moves that Dallas would do. They want that punter bad enough, they might trade here. All right, let's go to the Bears at number 20.
The Bears, oh my God, you know, ever since I was a kid, watched a lot of Bears football, and they're always known for their defense. And I think they draft defense very, very well. I still have Caleb Farley, cornerback out of Virginia here. I think they pick up Caleb Farley. I think it's a great pickup for the Bears. I think that's that type of football that he plays.
Well, the Bears are an interesting team because they now have, help me out here, the name is escaping me, former Bengals quarterback, former Cowboys quarterback is now in the building in Chicago.
Andy Dalton.
Andy Dalton. So my feeling, and I know a lot of people are probably going to laugh at me on this one, but I think that Andy Dalton, I always thought he was a serviceable quarterback. He's not going to necessarily put you on his shoulders and carry you to a title, but he's not going to lose games. He's a good game manager. I think that the Bears may be learning their lessons, that they need to get better at picking offensive players. They probably need to pick more offensive players than they're known to do. They've always been known as the monsters of the Midway. They've always been known for strong defenses. You know, you talk about the 86 defense, you talk about everything that Chicago has done. But I'm going to go with Tevin Jenkins here as an offensive tackle out of Oklahoma State. I think that you need that guy on the offensive line that's going to protect your quarterback. I think Dalton can get the job done, but not if he's laying on his back. And I think they're going to address that in the draft.
You know, Brad, to your point about the Bears, there's a lot to be said about a mystery plays, keeping your playbook secret, having some air that the other team can't figure you out. Your mystery as the Bears shouldn't be get 3 average quarterbacks and we don't know who's starting.
Well, and the Bears have done that. You go back to Cutler. Actually, go before Cutler. Look at the quarterbacks that the Bears have either drafted, signed in free agency. Kyle Orton, that pick, I don't know. The Bears are just one of those teams I can never quite figure them out.
But the Bears, like the Bucs before last year, are teams that have proven that you can win the Super Bowl on defense only.
Exactly. And if you look, you have to look at any of your Super Bowl winners, look at where they ranked in defense. I don't think you can go through any Super Bowl team and see anybody that had a defense outside of the top 10.
No, and especially high on run defenses for those top 5 teams in the playoffs.
And, you know, Jimmy Johnson, we brought him in there in Miami. Of course, that didn't work out. I just don't think Jimmy Johnson, I don't think his head was in the game. I don't think he wanted the daily grind of being a head coach. But he always said, and Bill Parcells has said the same thing, that you start with your left tackle, or if you have a left-handed quarterback, your right tackle, you need that guy that's going to protect your quarterback's blind side. You need a shutdown corner. Those are your 2 starting blocks. But Jimmy Johnson always said that you have to have an offense that can run the ball, control that clock, and you need a defense that can stop the run.
Well, I think, especially with the Jimmy Johnson problem, I'll bring up Jerry Jones. He's my favorite person to talk about. But after you've worked with him for a while, you probably need a couple years in rehab to get back into the football game.
He's going to drive you to drink. I'm a Dolphins fan, and I've been drinking for many, many years, even going back when Dan Marino was there, because we called them I know that the Arizona Cardinals, going back to the St. Louis Cardinals, were known as the Cardiac Kids. But I'm telling you what, watching a Miami Dolphin game as a fan, and the fans can relate to this, you are going to have a heart attack just about every game at some point when you're watching the Dolphins. But anyway, so I got the Bears taking that offensive tackle. Last pick for today, the Indianapolis Colts at pick number 21. They are on the clock.
Boy, I've been going edge and offensive line in these last 10, and it doesn't stop here. I think the Colts beef up their line. They probably need that. They need to get their quarterback off their back. I am going with Tavon Jenkins, Oklahoma State offensive tackle, big boy. I think he could buy some time. He plays very well.
So one pick later from where I picked him, going to the Bears. With the Indianapolis Colts and Jenkins off the board at this point, I'm going defensive end. I'm going edge, basically, for the Indianapolis Colts. I think that they would have addressed possibly the offensive line if any of the top interior linemen were still left in this draft, but they're not. They're all picked. So I'm going with Jalen Phillips, Miami, as a defensive end.
Good choice. That was my choice for the Dolphins.
And we certainly appreciate that. Any other comments? Anything else on this draft? As we've talked about, this is a mock draft, so anything can happen. We're probably 50% wrong, depending on, because any pick anywhere, somebody picks something that we're not thinking that they're going to pick. It changes everybody's mock, because now all of a sudden this guy's off the board that you thought was going to go at 12. He went at 7 or he went at 8. He's off the board. Who do you pick?
I think after you get to the 4th pick, it gets very interesting in this draft. And we keep saying that. Here would be my prediction for the next couple of weeks. Any move 4 and beyond has draft implications to many, many teams. I don't think we're going to see that move happen until draft day. I think if there's deals to be made, I don't see very many moves unless they're low round moves or moves around free agents. But I don't think any of these, substantial draft position moves are going to happen. I think they're going to happen at draft day. They're going to require teams to be on their heels.
I don't think what we saw Miami do, what we've seen some of the other teams do, I don't think those types of moves are going to happen now. I think that's done. I think every team now is pulling back into their bunker. They're pulling back. They're sitting in their draft rooms. They're analyzing that draft board, and they're thinking about, okay, if we get to our pick, and one of the guys that we wanted to pick is gone, do we trade down? Do we have room to trade up? But it doesn't make any sense for Miami to do that. But I think you've got a whole lot of other teams in there. You've got Denver. You've got the Cowboys. You've got the Patriots, all of whom could make a move on draft day and change up everybody's mocks and just blow them up.
Yeah, the other thing I noticed, my note to Miami-specific fans, right? I was on one of these boards the other day, and one of the moderators says, don't say we're going to pick this guy with 18. I've got sources that knows this is the plan and we're not leaving. Look, folks, the Miami Dolphins, any professional team is not sharing their plan with the moderator of your social media group.
Exactly. You don't have sources. I have sources, and my sources are the same sources that everybody else has. I have Mel Kiper. Okay. I have all John Clayton. Okay, I've got all of the main guys that everybody else has. You go to ProFootballTalk.com. Go to Pro Football Focus. Everybody is all over the board. Everybody's an expert. So these guys in these chat rooms in Facebook decide that they're a football genius. They're a general manager. Well, no, you're not, because if you were, you wouldn't be on that chat group in Facebook. You'd actually be running your team in the National Football League.
Well, and this is guesswork, right?
It's all guesswork.
You don't know how these guys are going to perform in the NFL. 23 quarterbacks in the first round since 2010, like 5 of them came out really good. Look how much time and attention and effort went into the other 18 quarterbacks.
Exactly. Well, and you got to look at this too. None of us that are putting a mock draft together and talking about who's going to be picked by what teams, none of us have been in those. None of us have been at the pro days. None of us have been watching the film on these guys as much as those teams have been watching it. And none of us have been privy to be inside the draft room when the teams are discussing their draft board, how they rank it. They rank it differently depending on what their needs are. So you have need number 1, need number 2, need number 3, and then you have your top guys. And as you go down the line, if your top need in Miami, I would say, is a wide receiver. So, or if it's not a wide receiver, it has to be somebody that can actually catch the football. So that brings us back to Pitts. That brings us back to one of the top receivers at the number 6 position. But what happens if their guys are gone? And it won't happen for Miami's situation. I think they could go with Waddle, they could go with Jamar Chase, they could go with Kyle Pitts, whoever's available. But when you go too far down in your depth of best player available at your need, But now you go to your second top need. All of your top 3 guys are gone. You're maybe pushing it a little bit to take that 4th pick at your number 1 need, but your top 2 picks at your number 2 need are still available. You're probably going to your number 2 need and taking one of those best guys because one of those 2 guys is probably better than your number 4 guy at your number 1 need. So we don't know. Nobody knows. Mel Kiper doesn't know. John Clayton doesn't know. I certainly don't know. Larry, I don't think you know. I don't think any of us know. So, and that's all I'm going to say to the fans. When you bring that up, the fans that are, you want to participate in online discussions. You want to participate in your Facebook groups. That's great. But keep it civil. Everybody's a fan of whatever team that you're following on Facebook. Everybody's a fan just like you are. So when you start to argue with other fans or you call them and tell them they're stupid because no way the Dolphins are going to do that, well, you don't know either. So nobody's a complete expert. If we were all experts, we wouldn't be sitting here. We would be sitting here in a studio doing a radio show or a TV show, whatever you want to call this. And I would be probably roaming the sidelines, or I'd be a general manager of a football team. I'd not necessarily be the Dolphins. I'd be in the NFL in some sort of a position if I was really that much of an expert. Same with anybody. So it's anybody's call. This is, again, it's a mock draft, and it's called a mock draft for a reason.
And some bad news this week, and I know there was multiple homicide around a former NFL player. I don't want to get into names or the situation, but definitely want to give our thoughts and condolences to the victims, the victims' families, Absolutely. Anybody impacted by the horrific event that happened. Absolutely,
and it's a very sad situation. We're seeing this way too often now out of current or former NFL players. You go back to Ray Caruth. Very, very sad situation. Look, there's always, if you're having trouble, if you need some help, call somebody. Get yourself somebody that is your go-to person. If you're starting to struggle with things and having different types of thoughts that aren't your thoughts normally, get some help, go talk to somebody, call a counseling facility. It's just very, very sad to see this type of stuff play out. Also, we noticed that Andy Reid's son charged with felony DWI. So that's another serious situation. And
it is. It's going to be interesting with that one, too, because he was actually on the coaching staff of the team, and it's now impacting the head coach. So I wonder how that's going to impact the Kansas City Chiefs going forward.
Well, I think that's a good point. And I think that Andy Reid, he's been through this. This has been something, this is not new. It's bad, but I think because Andy Reid has already been dealing with this, this is his son's demon. This is not Andy's. I think Andy's probably, as soon as they let him go at Super Bowl week, suspended him indefinitely from the team. I think Andy Reid was probably done with him at that point. I mean, he's still Andy Reid's son. He's still going to love his son. There's no doubt about that. But there comes a time, and we've all heard it from our own parents at one time or another. It's a thing called tough love.
Yep.
And you know what? It's time. You're either going to sink or you're going to swim. And you've got a lot of stuff. I'm there for you. This is what I'm telling him. If I'm Andy Reid, I'm telling him, look, I'm there for you. I'm going to be behind you 100%. But you got to get your act together. We all get to that point. At some point or another, it took me a long time too. At some point or another, though, you realize that you have to grow up and you have to become an adult and you have to make responsible choices and you have to be responsible for the actions that you make. So it's a tough situation. We just want to see people be safe, people be sound, make sound decisions. Mistakes are going to happen. But this is one too many times. If it's felony DUI, that means this is like 4th or 5th.
Yeah, there was a child hurt in the event, which is really sad.
And that's also the
But again, make smart decisions, take care of yourselves and each other, and don't pick up punter in the first round, Jerry Jones.
Exactly. And don't pick a kicker either.
Yes.
And that's it for this week. Thanks for watching or listening. Next week, we'll be covering any draft order changes, team updates, and part 3 of our mock draft. Please help us out by continuing to like, comment, or share. Also, visit us on the web at dolfanradio.com. And until next week, I'm Brad Michaels for Dolfan Radio.
Thanks for watching or listening. And be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. And for more great content, check us out on the web at www.dolfanradio.com.